This and that and what the fuck else, episode 140. This episode I'll be talking about, it's an interesting thing about China, something about the pestilence, and I've got a few things about the Donbass. Things are going wild there. And there's something about Georgia, the EU, and my favorite topic, the global revolution. And then there's some interesting stuff from the UK. And I have a little bit of a scary interaction with my Nazi stalker. Let's start with this image. This would be entered in a salon, typically in a street category. I think it's a great shot. It is crazy how those trees are growing, but the composition and the lighting, processing was done great. To me, an easy 8. And then we get to China. Now look at this. Chongqing Wulong Shangguao Bridge, with a double span of 2 by 405 meters, is the world's largest double arch bridge under construction at present. And I watched that video. That is an impressive piece of construction there. And the reason I'm putting it in here is just, for me, I see a lot of these things in China, and I wonder, if you look at the reality, China is not involved in wars. China hasn't got 700 bases around the globe. China is not forever terrorizing countries around the globe. And China doesn't have $800 billion military budget. China spends their money on infrastructure and bettering the lives of Chinese people. Is there anything like this happening in the United States currently? I have asked in a previous Skidmarks if there's any noteworthy infrastructure projects going on in the US. People must give me some links to it. I would like to see it. But I got nothing. And then we get to the pestilence. And I've entered this one in just as an indication that it's not only in South Africa where there was a lot of corruption around the pestilence. Look at what happened here in America. $250 billion swindled from the US pandemic fund. More than 250 billion pestilence relief fund were lost to fraud and waste. The directors of 3 US government agencies testified before the House Oversight and Accountability Subcommittee. You can stop the video and read the rest if you want to. I just shook my head when I saw that. And then we get to the Donbass, and in the past week, the Ukrainians has been bombing Donetsk city heavily. And there's a lot of people getting killed. And it is something that upsets me a lot. And I have spoken about it previously. There has been reports that came out that said all the HIMARS attacks on Donetsk city, the targets and the target information is fed into those launchers by Americans. And that was from an interview with a captured Ukrainian soldier, where he explained it, how it works. So by definition, it is Americans that are killing the people in Donetsk city. Let that sink in. The results of this morning's attack by Ukrainian army on residential Donetsk, by some miracle, no civilians have died. And then the next one. Another morning shelling, woman injured and taken to hospital. One of the shells hit a residential building on Levoberezhnaya Street. This is a private sector on the border of the Buryanovsky and Kalinsky districts. The woman received shrapnel wounds and was taken to the hospital. In addition, the cat was injured. She had a wound in the eye. Now, I saw another video of another attack, and there was a little girl sitting on the curb, and she had a blanket over her. And the reporter asked her, why is she sitting there? And she said, she's waiting because her mother is under the rubble of the building. Guys, in any case, I've spoken a lot about this. Those Nazis are going to pay for this. The Russians, they don't shoot civilians. They don't shoot civilian buildings. Most of the civilian buildings got damaged in the central parts and the western part of Ukraine from the missile attacks. It's actually Ukrainian anti-air missiles that go astray. So they shoot their own buildings by accident. But my Nazi stalker makes a lot of allegations about how the Russians are killing civilians. And I've given up talking to him about that because there's no way that you can convince the guy, and he comes out with the most ridiculous things that you can think of. And then here is something for the taxpayers of the West, especially the American taxpayers. Take note, there is one of the pieces of equipment that you bought for Ukraine. Now it is scrap metal. And then there's this. More great work by Italian journalists on the ground in Donetsk. Donetsk this morning, at least one Ukrainian rocket hit one of the districts in the city furthest from the front, wounding a woman. Armament supplied by NATO to Ukraine once again hit targets of no military interest, ending up in the garden of a house in Buryanovsky Street district. The shrapnel and the blast wave caused extensive material damage. The woman who was in a bedroom a few meters from the place where the rocket fell was injured. And it is interesting to see more and more European journalists that are getting airtime from Donetsk. And then this one is specifically for my Nazi stalker, because he sent me a message in which he gave me a long story of about 100,000 Russian troops that has walked over to the Ukrainian side because they don't get food and they don't get uniforms and they don't get guns and they don't get ammunition and I don't know what else. 100,000. Let that sink in. That's a lot of Russian soldiers that has deserted. Interesting that we don't see anything about it on any of the channels that I watch. And I watch about 40 channels on Telegram. Ukrainian channels, Russian channels, and more balanced channels. Nothing, there's nothing. But according to my Nazi stalker, 100,000 guys has walked over to Ukraine. Check out Russian military cooks and bakers providing hot meals and fresh bread to servicemen at the forefront. At the front line food supply point, cooks and bakers of the Central Military District provide 3 hot meals a day and freshly baked bread for military personnel of assault detachments and artillery units. Risking their own lives, specialists prepare and deliver meals to positions. Military chefs bake bread, prepare several types of salads, various soups, meat stews, national dishes of beef, pork and poultry. And I watched all those videos. It's amazing what they're doing. And then we have this. Christelle Nahan is a journalist from France who came to Donbass in search of the truth. What she saw shocked her. daily shelling of civilians, mountains of dead bodies and destroyed infrastructure. Today, Christelle is a war correspondent, shooting the truth and trying to tell it to the whole world. For that, she is considered as the main agent of the Kremlin in her homeland. The French woman is ashamed that her government puts weapons in the hands of Ukrainian terrorists to kill women, children and old people. Lots of stories like that. And the following is quite disturbing. Ukraine uses chemical weapons. A doctor who treats the wounded near Artemovsk and Soledar claims that Ukraine has been using chemical weapons for 2 months now. The exact chemical composition of these substances is not yet known, but they cause severe injuries to the people, including civilians. The use of chemical weapons is a war crime committed by Ukraine, a violation of convention of the country has signed. NATO countries know about the use of the chemical weapons but keep silent. Guys, it's crazy. Then we've got this. As at 7:45 Moscow time, 16 people were injured as a result of a HIMARS attack on the Alchevsk AS-1 bus station in Pervolsk LPR. There are 3 dead, among them a 17-year-old teenager. Take note, it was done with a HIMARS, and as I've said previously, Americans set the targets on the HIMARS systems. And then we've got this, and this is about Bakhmut. And this should be interesting because there's a lot of stories of why does it take so long for the Russians to capture Bakhmut. Here is some insight. The Wagner PMC fighters start storming underground mines of the Artemovsk plant. Fighting for Bakhmut, Azovstal is taking place at a record depth of up to 320 meters. Military correspondent Alexander Zimanov has said, look at that. And I have spoken about it, about all the tunnels that is under Bakhmut and Soledar. Now this gives you an idea of what they are dealing with. And then we get to that Nazi stalker of mine. He sends me this message and he says, yesterday the Kremlin decided to send a battalion out of Belgorod to go and help in Crimea. They scarcely arrived there and 250 of them landed in a minefield and 45 surrendered. Now my question is, does this guy really know where Crimea is? If you look at this map at the bottom there, that area that has got the black border, that is Crimea. And then you look to, and around it is sea, the Sea of Azov. On the right hand, at white is all Russia. And on the map here, the top piece is the red area. That is also Russia. So my question to him was, so first of all, to who did they surrender on Crimea, on the Crimean Peninsula? To who did they surrender? And then the second question is, how is it that there's in the middle of Russia, is there Ukrainian soldiers that are capturing Russian soldiers? This is, I cannot understand the logics, I don't understand, but that's the same shit that he had with Russia will take Moldova to get more control over the Black Sea. Then we get to this. Now Mick Wallace, he doesn't pull his punches in the EU Parliament. Zelensky's hand is in the pocket of every European. Mick Wallace, a member of the European Parliament, is outraged that Zelensky demands arms and makes no attempt to negotiate while Europeans lose their jobs, their homes and their savings. Zelensky only feeds the insatiable monster with the lives of his own Ukrainian people at the expense of ordinary European citizens. And as usual, no response. And then there's this interesting meme. Feminism is the idea that women are free when they serve their employers but slaves when they serve their husbands and children. And that is quite true. Then we get to Georgia, and this is quite interesting. Georgian authorities rebuked Zelensky for supporting protests in Tbilisi. The country's prime minister said that Ukrainian president and his counterparts in Kiev are probably motivated to make changes inside Georgia. When a person who is at war finds time in response to destructive action held here by several thousand people, this is a direct proof that he is included. He is motivated to make something happen here too, to change, the Prime Minister said on the air of iMedi TV channel. He advised the Ukrainian authorities to take care of their country first. And we all know that the Americans is now trying again with the color revolution in Georgia. And then there's this meme. Whilst America concentrated on wars and LGBT movements, President Xi Jinping is bringing peace and stability to nations. And that is so true. And then there was this interesting piece. Mexico submitted a request to join BRICS. I wonder how the Americans are going to respond to that one. And then there's another piece. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko has arrived in Iran. Right. Well, all I can say is the world is changing, and it's changing rapidly. And then there was this, and quite a few commentators have commented about this, and we are all waiting anxiously to see the response from the Europeans and the Americans. Second Kinshal attack hits NATO's Western Command Center 80 meters underground. Now, in the headline it says 40 killed, but there was 300 people apparently in there, and I reckon all of them are dead. But there's 40 high-ranking foreign specialists. Hence we can expect 40 body bags to be heading west in due course. Unconfirmed reports stated in the Nikolaev region, the Russian forces destroyed 4 senior militants and a number of officers and planners. This was quite disturbing. And then we get this. And my Nazi stalker has also given me a lot of stories. When I asked him about this, he told me that there's only one Orthodox church in Ukraine, and it was the Russian Orthodox Church, and Putin's Chomi is in charge of the Russian Orthodox Church, and that is why there's a resistance against that church. Once again, he astounded me with his knowledge about Ukraine. The canonical Ukraine Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate is being deprived of its historical monastery. The Kiev regime has disguised its repression of the monks as a decision of the Kiev Pechersk Lavra National Reserve. The monks of the UOC MP are obliged to leave the territory of the Lavra before March 29, 2023. In other words, they have less than 3 weeks to vacate all buildings and construction and find a new shelter. The administration of the reserve reported that the contract with the UOC has been terminated since March 29 in the decision of the administration, and is stressed that the buildings and facilities of the Lavra are state property. And that is what that Zazi Zelensky is doing. And they take over these church buildings, and then they have these satanistic rituals in there, and I have shown pictures of it previously. And then we get this. Orthodox residents of Kiev came to the service at the Kiev Patriarch Monastery to protest against the persecution of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Zelensky's latest decision on the church issues are creating serious split in Ukrainian society. but Orthodox residents are not going to give up their true faith at the behest of the Krivoy Rog clown. I think Zelensky is on his last legs. And then this from Russia. In 2022, the yield of grain in leguminous crop in Russia increased by 25.9%. And I have received a message from a guy that I'm in contact with in Russia, and he mentioned to me that quite a few South African farmers has already settled in Russia, and last year was the first year that they were in full production, and they played a significant role in the increase of the grain crop. And then we get to that SVB bank crash, and this little bit of trivia. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle lost everything in the Silicon Valley bank collapse, according to inside reports that suggest Harry screwed up big time. Now you can stop the video if you want to read all of that, but it looks to me like those two is in trouble now. And more about that bank. This is definitely not funny, so whatever you do, don't laugh. Breaking Harry and Meghan stand to lose millions in the collapse of the SVB bank. Sources tell ISN that the couple set up accounts following the advice of friends in Silicon Valley. This is a major blow, said one source. They had all of Harry's money here. I have to laugh. And then this next one is also connected to my Zazi stalker, because he sent me a message and told me that Erdogan has switched sides and is now supplying Zelensky with weapons. News of the day. Chagri Erhan, a member of the Council for Security and Foreign Policy under President of Turkey and director of Altenbosch University, said that Ukraine had asked Turkey to supply certain types of weapons, and this request was rejected. According to the information received from Russian sources, we are talking about the supply of Western-made armored vehicles as well as Mi-17 helicopters. My Nazi stalker is very well informed. And then we go to the UK. Again, you can stop it if you want to read all of that. Rishi Sunak has electricity grid upgraded to heat his private pool. How's that? The British must be so happy. And then there's some more from the UK. Look at that. Image says Zelensky, the UK government, and the British people. So the UK government is helping that little girl in the pool, and the British people is sinking, and the British army is on the bottom of the pool. How the kingdom has fallen. UK's army reduced to nothing but supplement to help troops of other nations. And British government can only wage proxy wars like non-stop supply of weapons to Kiev. Its latest humiliating truth from a British Major General Charles Collins, admitting the British Army no longer capable of even conducting military operations on its own. Collins also kind of admitted that if there's a country was in Kiev's place, it would have lost long time ago, as London could run out of ammunition and equipment real quick. Some more for the UK guys to chew on. And then we get into the Ukraine again, and this is more about that church. The Nazis will evict the monks of the Kiev Patriarch Lavrov forcibly for the involvement of the security forces. With the involvement of the security force. As an asset, they will involve the Zazis S-14 and the Kraken. These are the most repulsed scumbags and Satanists. The issue of the physical eviction of the monks from the Lavra was personally sanctioned by Zelensky. More Nazi action. And then there was this little meme that I picked up. If you are in favor of Ukraine, but not of Palestine, Lebanon, Afghanistan, Somalia, Syria, Libya and Iran, if you condemn Russia, but not Israel or the US, congratulations mate, you've reached the pinnacle of hypocrisy. And that is so true. And my Zazi stalker is accusing me of being on the side of communists and of terrorists and of I don't know what else. He doesn't understand that I just report these things as I see them. And then we get to the what a fuck moment, and you just have to look at the meme and laugh. Putin, I can't believe Joe has given that cokehead 200 billion in money and weapons. And the guy from Iran. Plus, what Zelensky's making off illegal arms sales. Now, chew on that, think about it, laugh about it. Please give me a like and a subscribe and share the thing. Thank you for your support.